Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Ebony, you started as, a risk manager, energy trading, and now you've become an MCC executive coach and strategist. What made you take that leap?
Well, it was something I meditated on, actually. And I used to watch TEDx talks quite often before I would go to work in the morning to go to the trading floor at my last corporate job. And one of the ones that I watched was by a gentleman named Rainer Stark. He's from BCG Berlin, and they did a TEDx there. And he talked about the fact that there wouldn't be enough workers come 2020. And so I remember watching that talk in 2014, and I didn't have the languaging that I have now. I think that's one of the things that when you go out on your own, you have better languaging than you did maybe when you were focused in on one thing in a corporate career. And I realized for me, now that I do foresight strategy, that was a signal. It was a talk that made me go, now what? Because that's a great insight. And he went through population data. And he talked about countries in the OECD, and then he talked about the US. And because I was in markets, I was always looking at market data and what signals can we go? Because you're always, in many ways, drawing out the consequences. So if this happens here, what's the tertiary trade or quaternary trade that somebody's looking for in order for them to move forward? And so that was one of the talks that really stuck with me. There was also a talk by a gentleman, his last name escapes me right now, but his first name is Hans. I think he's Dutch, and he gave it in one of the Emirates, and it was about birth rates. And I was like, there just won't be enough people. And this was 2014. And then I remember taking a couple hiking trips that year, and I was like meditating on different things. And I was like, if a big change is going to come, I'm ready for it. I'm going to be open. And the company I was working for wanted me to move. I didn't want to move, and I picked myself for the first time in my career. And so we parted ways. And I had a garden leave, and my garden leave was very long. And so I took that garden leave time to work on myself. At the time, I didn't know I was going to start my own company. This was 10 years ago, actually. We just had our 10-year anniversary a few weeks ago. But I knew that I was going to find something in better alignment with the way I wanted to live my life. And I was going to move my career from the center of my plate to a nice side dish. Maybe even a moose bouche, if you would say. And so that is, and so I took that year really just to work on myself. I figured out it was cheaper for me to become a coach than hire a coach for a year. So I rolled in a coach education program for like 200 plus hours. And I decided I was just going to spend that year on myself. I wasn't going to travel a lot unless it was for like a birthday, a graduation, a celebration of a friend's child, but no like go explore the world kind of trips. But I was just going to really focus in at home, learning and transforming myself. And that's what led me here. And then probably 10 months in, I decided I was going to start my own company, and that I probably wasn't the only person that was reaching pivots and crossroads and needed help transitioning. And then I had a few friends refer friends. My very first client actually was a product manager in Silicon Valley who was transitioning. Instead of taking family leave, because it's short in the United States, she just resigned. And after 9 months, she was ready to go back. She's like, look, I have all these Ivy League degrees. I'm going to find a job here. I'm not worried about that. I can resign and pick my family. And she was my very first client. And then I got other ones along the way. And I decided in November that I was going to start my practice, and I registered it so I could go to a conference. I needed a company name to put in the registration. And so I formed my company, and that was 10 years ago.
Okay, there is so much to dig into here. Talk to me about making decisions through meditation. The reason I'm asking you this is I happen to meditate myself every morning, 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. So tell me, that's the first thing that you mentioned, actually. You made that decision whilst meditating. Meditating, yeah, that's the right term, right?
Yes, absolutely. I started the practice when I became a director in my corporate job.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of really, I needed something to ground myself. And also because I wanted to be a better leader to my team and the people that I was working with. And so I asked a friend, she was actually she was at McKinsey, an ex-McKinsey person. And I was like, hey, she goes, you know what? These are some programs that I've done. She had a local woman here who was running a program on working on mindset, grounding yourself in yourself. And so I took it for 6 weeks. Meditation then became a part of my practice. And then I realized the more I went deeper, the better it got. And I got a lot more clarity and spending time like clearing out the noise and also the gremlin voices and things like that in your head is really powerful to help you decide that I want to anchor myself in my values, my choices, and not be so influenced by the world around me.
It's so funny. Like, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I
Yeah.
love meditation. The funny thing is that lately, the only thing I can think about when I'm meditating is walk, which is like, is that the purpose? So let's see. Let's see how that evolves. Tell us a bit more, Ebony, about what problem you solve now. What do McKinsey, product manager in the Silicon Valley, very high achieving people within corporates are coming to you for?
So, I would say our ideal client is a product manager, is a program manager or product manager.
Interesting.
So most people think like, oh, it's C-suite. It actually isn't. It's a lean teamed product manager who has a very big KPI or OKR that needs to get moved across the finish line, and they have budget. And that has become our sweet spot. They're really typically very smart, high achieving, very technical. We tend to work with a lot of engineers who are moving some type of technical project across the finish line, or they have a big movement inside their company that they're moving forward. And they just want somebody that they can work with and not worry that it won't get done. And it took me a while to figure that out. I used to think, oh, it was C-suite, it was C-suite -1, C-suite -2. No, for us, it really is a high achieving program manager that really has a project that they want to get complete and they don't have a team. And so then we step in, we act as their team, and we put together all the collateral. Our main goal, I'm still a leadership coach, even when we're consulting, we're still a team of coaches who have coaching is a skill for us, not the thing that we do. We're all technical people, and we act like we're still in a technical role, but always putting into the forefront. This is the goal of the project. This is typically how our program manager or project manager shows up in the workplace, and these are their stakeholders that they're always managing towards. How can we support them in getting the OKR done, but also ensure that they're getting promoted in their careers? Like, and so we're like, tell us your tension. Who are your friction points? Who are your advocates? We can help you rally your network internally. And this is the perspective we bring as a leadership coaching team that also does consulting, is that we want you to always be successful in your career, that people view you and you have the right buy-in from your stakeholders and you're addressing their concerns in your deliverables. So it's an extra, I would say, sprinkle we give to our projects because my greatest joy as a coach still, because I'm an MCC, is when my clients get promoted, right? They weren't my coaching client and we coach, of course, but when my consulting clients get promoted, I was like, so tell me about your performance review if you're comfortable discussing it. And I was like, these are some ways that you could present it. This is how you do your check-ins. Tell me about your one-on-ones when you're doing your sync meetings with your stakeholders. What does that look like? And I was like, okay, great. What format do they typically like? We then give them their interim progress reports in the format internally so that they don't have to redo the work that we're doing, but keeping in mind that they always need to get buy-in from their stakeholders to keep the project moving forward. And so that's the feedback we typically get, is that we like working with you because we know that the work's going to get done and it's going to be in the way that our leadership likes to see it, so that we can continue to get approval every step of the way through the project timeline.
Okay. You're giving me so much, Ebony. This is gold. Thank you so much. So there is one thing here that I want to, multiple things, but we only have so much time. But there is one thing that I want us to double down on here. I talk to 4 to 5 B2B coach consultants per day. We're talking about people making 7 figures, if not more. None of them, especially on the podcast, were able to give me such a precise ICP. So many people are like, oh, I help business owners. Oh, I help scale-ups, right? When asked, hey, who is it that you help? They went, program or product manager, has very big KPIs, has budget, usually very smart, very high achieving engineer, big movement inside their company, no team. Like, riches are in the niches. I think the more narrow you can go when you select your ICP, the more money you're going to make. As long as you choose an ICP that has purchasing power and you solve a problem for them and you're good at solving this problem, obviously. But so what made you, and that's something I teach in the mastermind I host, because it's like, it's so important. How did you break down for us how you came up with the conclusion that, hey, actually it's not C-suite, it's not C-suite -1 or -2, it's program or product manager with all the criteria that you've mentioned here. How did you come up with that conclusion?
One of our core values in our company is pain plus reflection equals progress. And it's one that we got from Ray Dalio at Bridgewater, because I came out of trading. And so when we run on the EOS, which is Entrepreneur's Operating System. And one of the things we do is our quarterly review. Actually, we do it monthly. And we say, where do we make our money? Who was our ideal client during that time? And did it flow with ease? Because nobody steps out on their own to have a PETA client, And so pain in the rear end. And so when we figured out who our ideal clients were, we then created a personality matrix. We know that these are the 5 factors that our ideal client that's at A level, B level, C level typically have. And these are the people that we want to develop additional relationships with. And so inside of some of our target companies where we have MSAs and we typically will work on projects with them, can we also develop a relationship with the administrative business partner of a director? Because that person typically has overview, and depending on the organization, they also have master's degrees, right? MBAs. So they're just serving as an administrative business partner. Maybe it's a training track. The company that I came out of, oftentimes they would have, you get an EA, but the EA didn't have the administrative, they were in substitute of that leader when they were overscheduled. And like when I came out of BP, their role was called a turtle. Turtles were people who were looking to get a big promotion jump. And so they shadowed another leader for a year to 18 months. Our CEO always had 3 or 4. Those people would eventually make it into group vice president. So a VP would then take a job as a turtle, then become a group vice president or an SVP at the end of their turtle stint. And so it was one of the ways that you would, if you wanted to jump 2 or 3 levels in the organization, you would go and become the shadow essentially of a more senior leader. And then you move through the organization. It's a catalyst. We figured that happens in some of our ideal clients as well. And so some of those people were program managers or product managers. They wanted them to make a jump and accelerate their career. They become an administrative business partner or other things like that. We develop relationships with them, and they'll call like, hey, so my director has a project that needs to be done in the next 60 days. Can you stand this out for us? We're not looking for execution. We just are looking for interviews, the interview report, validation, and all the content that'll go into the program. We will do the launch, but you will train the person who's doing the launch. That's about what we have bandwidth for. We can give you about 20, 30 hours over the next 60 days to work to validate the materials that you're coming out, but we need your team to stand this up for us. And so we did. And so that's kind of how we began to niche down, that it was actually either an administrative business partner or EA for a very senior person who needed additional help to stand a program up, or it was a program or product manager who was lean teamed but high accountable. And that's how we really got there. And that came through reflection. Like we would just look at the numbers, who our people were, and we realized that nobody's serving them. As organizations flatten out, they don't have developmental staff members anymore. Everybody's expected to contribute, but they may have budget for non FTEs to bring in additional support, and that's where we play a role.
I love that. What has worked for you, Ebony, to get the attention of those high achieving, smart, big KPI project managers and program managers? Like, how do you get the attention of those people so that when they have a project to deliver in the next 60 days to one of their directors, they're like, I know who I'm going to call? What has worked for you to market and brand your company?
Speaking is one, and then they also refer each other. Sometimes I'll get a call from a program manager and I'll be like, how'd you get my number? They're like, so-and-so told me. I was like, I don't know who so-and-so is, but I'm happy that you called me. We would love to speak with you. And she's like, she told me you could stand us up really quickly. I was like, yeah, absolutely. Tell me your timeline. You could be fast, you could be cheap, or you could be good. We choose to go with fast and good. And so I was like, this is, you anchor your price and say, these are the things that we could probably get done during that time period. And then these are the things we could get done if we had a little bit more time to help you stand this up. And so they refer each other because we are niched in just a few industries. And then we'll do speaking. And then we go to conferences, actually, quite often, where larger corporations are looking to bring small business into their supply chain. So if you look, and I don't know much about the European stats, but if you look across North America, which is where we're based, half of the countries in North America, the population are employed by small business. And so there are large corporations who understand that there's an ecosystem. They need customers, and then they also need thriving employment. And can be a generative circle. And so I will also go to places where they're looking to bring small business into their ecosystems or offer to speak for industry groups. We focus a lot on COIs, that common centers of influence. So associations where they're going to get together. Maybe it's talking about safety, or it's talking about, because I have a master's degree in safety, so I'll go back to safety industry things. Or maybe they're talking about launching new drugs and it's all pharmacist. Well, it's a great place to pick up people in healthcare. And so we kind of have a three-prong approach when we're looking at things, but centers of influence, speaking, reaching out and going to conferences where they hang out. Not a lot of people are going to go to, like, a really boring industry technical convention, but we'll go. And oftentimes I'll apply to speak, because not a lot of coaches or consultants will come in unless they're specifically in that industry to talk to it. The less sexy, the better.
My God, we need 6 additional hours. How do you find those right conferences? Because so I know that's something a lot of B2B coaches and consultants get business from, right? Obviously, conferences. Ideally, if you can speak in front of an audience of people you typically help, that's even better. I think what you just pinpoint here is super important. Getting in front of the right audience. For the not necessarily sexy, but driving business impact versus going for the vanity metric. Talk to us about how you implement that tactically. How do you find the right conference, the right center of influence, the right speaking engagement that will actually move the needle for you and not just get you views or get you connections that are, I'm not going to say worthless. Well, here I said it, but not contributing to your business growth, let's say.
Yeah. One, so there's conference planners websites where they list all the conferences that are coming. The other one we'll do is I have markets that I target. I will go and look for every conference that's coming to that convention center. Right? So if they're sometimes published like 18 months out, then if I'll look for a call for speakers, when I say it's somebody on my team, we look for a call for speakers for that particular conference and see if they have speaking opportunities. And if they don't, and it's in a city where one of our team members is local, we'll reach out and say, hey, if you ever have anybody that cancels or is late, please know we're in your city. we would love to serve you. And they may call you as a hip pocket speaker for a last minute engagement because travel happens and travel hiccups happen, and they meet, and we have a couple canned talks that we have in place that we have prepared that are of the moment and buyer ready.
This is very smart. How do you... So, I love it. Speaking, referrals, conferences, it's very much centered around... So referrals, I would say, like any thriving B2B coach or consultant, right? Doing a good job typically gets you more business or reoccurring business. Speaking, conferences, center of influence. So it's very much into the relationship building space, the authority building space, which makes a lot of sense. How do you go from that? You've had that initial touch point with the prospect, with the high achieving project manager, program manager. How do you move this into a closed deal and the letter of engagement and SOW?
Mm-hmm.
How do you go from awareness, problem, solution to, hey, we are talking fast, cheap. What was the other one?
No, we're not
High
cheap.
quality.
We're not cheap. No.
No, exactly. So you have three options. I like the.
Not cheap.
No, I love it. No, of course. I mean, you can do things three ways, right? High quality, cheap, and fast. But you cannot have all three. So you're gonna have to
Correct.
choose. Typically,
Yeah,
high quality and cheap, or it takes very long to do. But so, how do you go to that conversation and to a conversation of like, we rock and roll from these marketing strategies that you have?
we have a 5-step buying process that we're aware of.
Okay.
So we typically, because I should say that I'm a coach, so I do a lot of personality assessments. And so one of the ones that I do like is the Colby A, because it tells you your modus operandi for how you solve problems. For me, I build a process because I'm a chemist by education, and I came out of petrochemicals. And so I built a process. And so our process is the one we follow. Once we meet, we try to immediately schedule a capabilities briefing. And inside of that capabilities briefing, we then tell them the types of problems that we solve, but mainly we want to see what problems they have. And then I gear our responses inside that conversation to some things that we've done in the past. And then they typically will say, oh, these are the things that I can do to really begin to move myself forward, to move the idea forward. And then from there, I work with them to co-create a solution. Even in that same meeting or in the next meeting, we co-create the solution. We typically like to do some type of discovery with their stakeholders, so we make sure that we're really designing a solution that works for the audience that's intended. And then we go from there. And then a lot of touch base, good work back, project work backs that they can access anytime. When we are in the delivery part of it, we always are capturing metrics for them, and we discuss the metrics in the beginning. And so it's that level of comfort that they then begin, the trustful relationship begins. Some of my program managers I've been with throughout their career, they went from an IC to now they're a director over an entire area inside of large tech companies. And so they just know it's a trusted voice. And so we center them and their needs versus the things that we may think are best. And so I think me not having a large consulting background came from that. I literally just took a bunch of classes and webinars and read books. What's his name? I'm looking over at my bookshelf. He has like the $1 Million Consulting Practice book. Those are the ones that I read when I first started 10 years ago. And I just thought about, what do people want? What do they need? And how can I serve them? I used to we would bring in the large consulting firms when I was in my last Fortune 100 company. And I think about how I, as a client, wanted them to show up for me. And one of our core values I started the company with was be the coach that the client needs. And so be the coach the client needs, not how I want to show up. I often tell my team, I'm like, that sounds amazing that you want to do that, but that's not what they're paying us for. They are paying us this. This is very clear. If you want to do that as a part of a surprise and delight, but do that. But we're not going to center the project around your idea, because that's not what he, them, she is paying us for. We're going to do the work that the client is paying us for. And then if you want to suggest things along the way, we're happy to do that. But this isn't about you. This is about them and what they need.
Amen. Mm-hmm. So it's funny because you're alluding to one of the other questions I wanted to ask you, Ebony,
Okay.
which is retention. And I think in your case, it's going to be particularly interesting because clearly you have the marketing and sales playbook well nailed down. I also feel that in your niche, someone comes to you, right? They have a deadline in 60 days and they need urgent help. And then the project is done. So,
Mhm.
how do you, when I was a consultant myself at PwC, the partner who kind of taught me everything was like, Guillaume, there are two types of consultants. There are the hunters and there are the farmers. And he was like, I'm a hunter. I love the smell of fresh blood in the morning. I love to go after new business. That's my jam.
Mhm.
I was like, fine. He was like, but the partners making the most money, the ones growing the fastest, are the farmers.
Mhm.
Because the ones who are able to take that initial project, over deliver, burn out their associates on it. That's another topic. And then transform it into a multi-layered, multi-year project involving other teams from the firm. Those are the ones who are growing the fastest because this is
Mhm.
where the money is. In your case, you have a deadline on top of this. So how do you take that initial engagement and transform it into a multi-layered, multi-year project and retain clients?
Typically, because they have a phase one that they have to get done. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes we do a crawl, walk, run, and that's how it goes. Or we're designing a project that's meant to be stood up for a few years, and so that they come back. But one of the things that we also will do, because for some of our clients, we work with 3 or 4 or 5 project managers or program managers, we will go back to procurement who onboarded us and say, we'd love to give you a success showcase. And for each one of the clients inside of that company, we talk about this was the challenge, here's the solution, here are the results, because we collect
Mm-hmm.
metrics along the way. And then their procurement team always has a deck that's continuously updated from us with all of our wins for the year. And then we will periodically ask, oh, for buyers in these categories, we'd love to schedule one like a 45-minute success showcase so that when they see things coming through the procurement pipeline, that they recognize that we have some experience inside your company specifically doing these things. So we'll say these are company related successes, and these are the ones that are not that we've done for others. And then if the buyer is open to it on the procurement side, we also will, because we respond to a lot of RFPs, we will also send them a quarterly update, or some companies, some of our buyers are like monthly is okay. We send them a win announcement that we're not publishing on social media, but we send it to our ideal buyers and we say, hey, we just won this project with this type of company. These are the things we expect to go. When the win is over, we then send a success announcement and say, here's the original winner announcement we sent. This is how the project wrapped up. They may have a similar need. And that's kind of what keeps us in the ecosystem. For some of our program managers, we are the execution partner. We
Mm-hmm.
deliver them every week internally. So, especially on the learning and development side, we're running their upskilling, reskilling programs because they don't have instructional designers or facilitators. And so we will do that work for them. And so we have a set schedule. We sign MSAs for the year.
Something I want to double down on here because that's so important, which is reinforcing decisions and successes. What you just explained around having that repository of wins, of successes, of milestones achieved is gold. And that's actually how we recommend our clients to get testimonials from their clients. It's actually so documenting everything, obviously, right? You usually make a business case anyways to get hired as a consultant. Then documenting each step of the way, recording calls where you ask for live feedback, having a repository of the wins and successes that you can pull back at the end of the year is not just good for client retention and for your client happiness survey. It's also good for upsells. It's like, let's look back at the last 12 months, a Spotify wrapped. Here is everything we achieved. And remember when you had this and this, and this was the success, and then this again. Oh my God, cool. Do you want this the next year as well? So important. And it's great that you're doing it. Ebony, you're flying through this interview. So let me ask you a bit of a curveball question.
Sure.
Where What's the next big thing for you? In the sense of where where do you feel challenged right now?
Mhm.
And you know that once that challenge is, like, once that nut is cracked, let's say, you're going to take the whole thing to the next level. What would that be for you?
We are acquiring other companies in our space.
Nice.
So inside the United States, we're in the middle of something called the silver tsunami, where about $10 trillion in economic value will be transferred between generations because baby boomers they're the largest generation in the United States. They have small businesses that their children do not want to acquire, but they're not so large that PE is interested in them. And so there are a lot of people that run multiple seven-figure coaching practices that don't have an exit strategy. Those are our targets.
Nice. I recognize a Cody Sanchez student when I see one.
No,
And
not Sanchez, not at
not
all.
even?
No,
Okay.
not
Interesting.
Sanchez at all. So it's called ETA. I would
Okay.
say I first heard about it when I was at a talk for people who did consulting for inside our federal government space. But
Mm-hmm.
really, the speaker I heard that kind of changed it for me, Walker Diable. But I didn't do Accelerator. I did another one that was really focused in on sub. Like we're probably like sub $5 million acquisition targets.
Okay.
But more importantly, there's a group of like women business owners that I'm a part of, and I see how they have scaled over my involvement over the past 7 years. And so some of the women that I've admired in those groups, they make moves in that way. And so
Mm-hmm.
while I may not be able to do it at their level because she's much larger and she's buying IT companies, and her most recent acquisition was like 180 million, but
Not bad.
not bad. But it's still larger. Her company's still much larger than the acquisition that she did. But just kind of hearing her share, like, this is what I've done this year. This is how I've been impacted and how I've seen her trajectory grow from like a 20-person company to a 5,000-person company. And she's quite open and honest. And this is how I started. These are the things that we do. These are the things that I put in place. And when I chat with her, she's like, yeah, just do it. And others will be like, yeah, so I scaled. This is how I scaled. They, especially the ones who say we didn't use outside financing. There's ways to structure the deal where you don't have to go to a bank. And what does that look like for the seller? And taking kind of that ethos from an ecosystem that I'm a part of. And so for me, I would say community is a big part of it. You can learn from your peers, and you can also learn quite a bit from people that are 3 to 4 stages ahead of you about where that can come in. I've done friends and family for some of my friends. I'm at the stage where I'll potentially ask friends if they want to do friends and family and say, this is your payout and the cap table. And so I literally took a fellowship on structuring cap tables for the buyout process, the things you should look for, where you want to potentially get financing from. And then there's people out there that's what they're interested in. And so I'm a self-funded searcher. I probably this was in our 18 months ago, I put it in our second half 2025 plan that this is where we would be. And so I learned the process.
Mm-hmm.
What IOI mean, what's an LOI, how all these things kind of play out. And I joined a community of self-funded searchers, and these are the things that we do. I'm searching in my space, but my buy box also contains a few other things, and that's our next big thing. Is really how do we work on the consolidation? One of the things I think, especially for companies who haven't prepped, I'm in EO. I should also say that I'm in EO, South Florida. I think we're the third largest chapter of EO in the world. A lot of people there also, it's one of the ways I learn from my peers is really thinking about one of the guys, he buys probably 1 or 2 companies a year, but Walker came to our chapter for a talk in March of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And I had met a woman at a company that I'd used their services before. That's a professional studio we go to when we need to record content for clients. And so I've rented their studio space before in their production team. And she was there, and I was like, she's like, you've heard of us? I was like, I've used you like twice in the past year. And she's like, amazing. And I said, oh, how do you contribute to their growth? And she goes, I'm head of our M&A. I was like, really? She goes, yeah, we buy 6 to 11 companies a year, and we have for the past 4 years. And I was like, really? And she goes, yeah. And I was just exploring really then. And she goes, we really use Walker's book. One of the companies they had just acquired had invited them because they were an EO company. And that was one of those signaling conversations that I was thinking about it the right way and what it like. And I think, for me, it's hearing other founder stories, not necessarily the ones that people would typically know, but the ones who are in the trenches and kind of keeping their head down and they're just doing the work. And they are really good at sharing the pitfalls and their wins and what's the most important thing. We'd had another speaker before who he did one round of raising and then he did an exit to a large private equity firm at 10 figures in 8 years. And he's like, he goes, it's culture. He goes, I will tell you, it doesn't matter your product if you don't have great culture. The coach in me was like, yes, 100% agree. And he talked about what did it look like for any acquisitions they'd done along the way, and then how he prepared for his exit. And so hearing other people's stories are super helpful for me because you either can learn it yourself through your own mistakes, or you can hear other people's kind of distillation and take the parts of the distillation that are applicable to you and go forward from there. So that's our next big one. Really, it's me watching people that I connect with regularly. They're in the space, maybe they're 10 steps ahead of me. And then like, oh, what's that move that they just made that I can make on a smaller level at my own scale to get myself closer to what my goal is for my 5-year plan or my 10-year plan.
Ebony Smith, ladies and gentlemen. Ebony, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
LinkedIn. Just look up Ebony Smith Coach. It'll get you to my short link, and you can follow me there.
We'll put all the links in the description. I can say one thing for sure, Ebony, you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn from this interview. Me, awesome. I just added you. Ebony, thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.